Hey there, it's Pastor Joe at Southwest Lutheran Church, and I'm here with a devotional thought for you today and a great book for you to read. And the book I've been reading is called Mirror to the Church, Resurrecting Faith After Genocide in Rwanda by a man named Emmanuel Katongole. And this book was powerful. I really recommend it if you're looking for a read, but I will say it was difficult to read because he goes into some details. And genocide is never pretty. Just to give you the background, is in Rwanda, for a long time there had been two groups of people, the Hutu and Tutsi. And for a long time, these two groups had coexisted peacefully. They married one another, they worked with one another, they started businesses together, they were neighbors, they worshiped together in churches. But then a group came in, and a Hutu power movement began, which eventually turned into a group that was calling for violence, a group founded on grievance, a group that wanted to hurt people, and they did. And so this happened just after Easter in the spring of 1994. Hutus rose up and began systematically searching for and killing Tutsi people. Now, this is especially hard for us as Christians, or for me as a pastor, to think about because, like I said, they go into details. And one of the truths about Rwanda was that for a long time it had been held up as a model of evangelization in Africa. The country was overwhelmingly Christian, over 90%, like 95, 99, something like that. And in that sort of context, these people could turn on one another and kill their fellows. Not just killing neighbors, not just killing people in homes or streets, but even in churches, because when the killing started, many people ran to churches for aid, for sanctuary. And so people would come into the very same churches where they had been worshiping with their brothers and sisters in Christ a few days before, and they would murder them there. And wow, that's hard to read, hard to imagine happening. Now, there's a message for us in this book, and this is why I think it's really worth reading. It's called Mirror to the Church, because Emmanuel Katongole, he wants to say that he doesn't just see this happening in Rwanda. He says he sees the things that happened in Rwanda that led to this genocide happening elsewhere in the church, in the West especially, where we tend to think of ourselves as being above violence and anger and grievance. Okay? But he says, here's how this happened. People began to tell stories about themselves. People began to form an identity for themselves that was not founded on Jesus, but it was founded on grievance. It was founded on anger. It was founded on a desire for violence. And because the church failed to give people a better imagination, the church failed to help people form an identity that would counteract those forces of anger and grievance. This identity took hold, and so people rose up and began killing. Like I said, he sees these sorts of things happening in other places in the church. And I kind of agree with him. And not to say that I think we're all heading towards genocide here in America, but I see people are forming identity more and more. People are telling stories about themselves more and more that are founded on things like grievance, founded on things like anger. And we see this, right? Even politically and culturally, it's easy to blame others for the problems in our culture and our society. It's easy to blame others when I lose a job. It's easy to blame others when I'm not happy with the way our city is handling some issue. It's easy to blame others. It's easy to say they're the problem. And that is the fundamental attitude that led to something like the Rwandan genocide. And so Emmanuel Katongole's call for us as Christians around the world is to say, how can we offer people a better imagination? How can we be restored through the renewing of our minds so that we will tell stories about ourselves that are founded in Jesus and not founded on grievance and anger and violence? And so here's a devotional truth for us today, right? The stories we tell about ourselves do make us who we are. They form our identity. And if that's true, then here's a devotional question for you today. Let's hold up the mirror and ask, do I tell a story about myself? Do I believe something about myself that isn't founded on Jesus? Do I tell a story about myself that is fundamentally about how other people have wronged me or how other people deserve my wrath? If that's true, then let's ask this further question. How can I change that, right? how can I have a better imagination? How can I start to tell myself stories that are founded on Jesus and what he has done for me and who he has made me to be as a child of God, a forgiven, redeemed, restored person in Jesus Christ? That's the sort of story that should be the foundation of my identity. So, 2 questions, right? Is this true? Is this do the stories I tell myself, do they come from grievance? Or do the stories I tell about myself come from Jesus? And either way, how can I learn to tell better stories about myself? So, I would love to hear your answers to those questions. I'd love to have any conversation you have. So throw that stuff down in the comments below and we'll talk. And until next time, here's a great book to read. God bless.